They told me it was a pharmacy error. Said it was a system glitch. Barcodes got crossed, the label printed wrong, no way I could have known. But I saw the label. I remember the label. It said insulin, clear as day. Room temperature. Lot number ending in 37B. Expiration still 6 months out. I'd been a nurse for 6 years when it happened. Confident, but not cocky. Double-check everything. Especially meds. Especially insulin. I was on MedPass during a short-staffed evening shift. Just 4 patients. All routine. Mr. Langston was one of them. Type 2 diabetic, recovering from a minor post-op complication. Vitals stable. BG a little high, 216. So the doc ordered 6 units of regular insulin. Draw it, label it, scan the barcode, chart it. You don't forget this stuff. It's muscle memory. But 5 minutes later, he was on the floor, seizing, clutching his chest, eyes wide, foaming at the mouth like something had grabbed him from the inside and squeezed. We called a code. I jumped into compressions, felt his ribs shift under my palms. He was gone before the crash cart even rolled in. I cried in the supply room. Not because of the death, we lose patience, it happens, but because something felt wrong about it. Something didn't line up. They pulled me off shift and took my statement. Risk management, pharmacy, compliance, the whole internal machine. A week later, the autopsy report came through. Acute hyperkalemia, lethal dose of potassium chloride in the bloodstream. No trace of insulin. I remember staring at the email thinking, there's no way. I didn't touch potassium. I hadn't even seen a KCl vial all shift. And that's when the questions started. Did you pull it from the wrong drawer? Are you sure you scanned the right barcode? Could someone have tampered with the cart? I told them no, again and again, because I know what I saw. But they needed it wrapped up, so they called it a labeling error. Said the system hiccuped when pharmacy printed the sticker. A 1 in a million mistake. I was cleared of wrongdoing, case closed. Except the following week, I found another vial. Same lot number, same regular insulin label. Except this time, it was sitting in the crash cart. Not the fridge, not the med drawer. The crash cart, unsecured, wide open after a code blew on 5 North. I wouldn't have even noticed it if I hadn't dropped a flush and bent down to grab it. The vial was upside down, wedged next to an EpiPen. I picked it up and turned it in the light, and my blood froze. Same lot number, 3-7-B. My breath got shallow. I felt like someone was watching me. I took the vial straight to pharmacy and handed it in without saying a word. Didn't sleep that night. A few days later, my locker was open when I arrived for shift. I lock it every time. Always have. Habit. Nothing looked touched. Uniform still folded. Shoes lined up. Badge clipped where I left it. But my personal meds, iron supplements, OTC sleep aid, a few loose ibuprofen in a bottle, smelled wrong. And when I checked the label, it was dated yesterday. In a bottle I brought from home 3 weeks ago. I dumped the entire thing and drove it to an off-site pharmacy. Had them tested under the table. I know a guy. 2 of the tablets weren't ibuprofen. They were tramadol. Heavy duty, habit forming, controlled. The bottle would have failed a tox screen. That's when I stopped using my locker. That's when I started keeping everything in my car and sleeping with my bedroom door locked and putting tape over my laptop camera. That's when I knew someone wanted me out. After the tramadol pills, I stopped talking to anyone about it. I knew how it sounded. I knew what they'd say. You're overworked. You're stressed. Take a break, Claire. That's what they say when they're trying to make you crazy. Or when they're hoping you'll bow out on your own so they don't have to get their hands dirty. I thought maybe I was paranoid. For a while. Thought maybe I imagined that vial in the crash cart. Or maybe the pharmacy tech mislabeled a few and they caught the rest before they got into circulation. But then came the second patient. And after that, I stopped making excuses. It was Mrs. Dalton, diabetic, elderly, in for post-op rehab after a hip replacement. I wasn't even assigned to her that night, but I overheard the nurse on shift say her blood sugar was spiking and she needed coverage insulin. They pulled it from the fridge, scanned it, same as always. I froze the second I saw the lot number flash on the screen. 3-7-B. I stepped in like it was casual. "Hey, mind if I take that one? I think I saw something weird with that lot earlier." The nurse handed it over without a second thought. I swapped it for a fresh vial and tucked the 37B into my jacket pocket like it was radioactive. Ran it down to pharmacy. Same drill. No trace of insulin. Potassium chloride. Again. This wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a misprint or mislabeled batch. Someone was swapping the vials on purpose. And they were doing it under everyone's nose. I brought it to risk management. Again. I told them about the second vial, the repeated lot number, the toxicology results from the Dalton vial. They barely blinked. Said it was under investigation, that I shouldn't discuss it further for legal reasons. But I knew they weren't investigating anything. Because later that same night, I checked the med fridge on my own. Just one peek, one drawer, 4 more vials labeled insulin, all different lot numbers, but all had the same weight. Too heavy. Insulin doesn't weigh that much. Potassium chloride does. I didn't even take them that time. Just stood there staring. Because I finally understood the truth. This wasn't an isolated incident. It wasn't even personal. It was a system. 2 days later, my badge stopped working. I was locked out of the med room, locked out of the documentation system, locked out of the nurse's lounge. I went to the charge nurse, and she said IT had flagged my account due to unusual access attempts. I asked to speak with someone, anyone, got referred to HR. HR referred me to my union rep. The union rep told me to lawyer up. I hadn't done anything wrong, but they were treating me like I had. Like I was the one swapping vials. And then came the kicker. I came home from a night shift to find my front door unlocked. I live alone. Always double-check the lock. Inside, everything looked normal, except the trash. A banana peel on top. I hadn't bought bananas in weeks. That night, I turned my bedroom camera on, the one I'd taped over. I pointed it at the front door. Hit record. Went to bed. At 3:12 a.m., the hallway light flicked on. The door creaked open. A shadow moved inside, just barely visible on the edge of frame. No face, no sound. Just the shape of someone checking, looking, and then stepping back out and gently closing the door behind them. I handed that footage to the police. They told me it was too blurry to be useful. I asked if they could enhance it. They said no. Said I should think about taking a leave of absence. Said they'd flagged my name in the system already. Because guess what? Someone's been using my login at work, prescribing meds I didn't prescribe, filling forms I didn't touch. They have me on record approving 6 vials of insulin last Tuesday. I wasn't even working Tuesday, but the system says it was me. So now I've got no job, no backup, no way to prove I'm not the one behind this. But I still have one thing. That original vial. The one I found in the crash cart. I stashed it before the internal audit started. Took it home. Kept it hidden. Because if they come after me next, I need proof. Something real. Something they can't erase. And if something happens to me, if I accidentally take the wrong dose, or crash my car, or go missing, there's a key taped under my kitchen sink. It unlocks a safety deposit box. Inside is the vial, the lab report, and a list of every lot number I ever flagged. Someone's running a silent body count in that hospital, swapping meds, covering their tracks with glitches, and they almost got away with it. But not if I disappear first. Patient 4B wasn't screaming anymore. That's the first thing that told me something was wrong. Because burn victims don't stop screaming. Not when their pain meds wear off. Not when you change their dressings. Not when their wounds start to itch and nerve endings flare back to life. They scream because their skin is on fire, even when the fire's out. But 4B, he'd gone silent. He was a firefighter, ironically. 3rd-degree burns over 60% of his body. The story was vague. Structure collapse, chemical fire, inhalation injury. When they brought him in, he looked less like a man and more like melted wax with a heartbeat. We sedated him heavily. He was on a cocktail of morphine, ketamine, propofol, and Versed. enough to keep anyone under. But even so, he'd twitch sometimes, clench his jaw, moan through the vents when we adjusted his sheets. That's why I noticed when it stopped. One night, around 3 a.m., I went in to do a standard neurocheck. He was breathing steady, vitals within range, but something about the room felt off. The bandages we'd changed just 4 hours earlier were already damp again. The room smelled faintly, just faintly, of gasoline, which makes no sense. Everything in our unit is scrubbed, sanitized, and ventilated, especially with burn patients. Their skin is a sponge for infection. You smell anything, you report it. But I hesitated, because the smell wasn't strong, and because reporting strange smells at 3 a.m. tends to get you labeled paranoid, or worse, problematic. I changed the outer dressings, wiped the rails, made a note to ask the night tech if she'd spilled anything, and that should have been it. Except when I stepped into the hallway, I caught a glimpse of someone turning the corner at the far end. Hooded sweatshirt, baggy, shoulders hunched, and not wearing scrubs. Security said no one had come in, that the cameras didn't show anything out of the ordinary. I insisted, asked to see the footage, sat with one of the overnight techs to scroll through it manually. There, 2:47 a.m., hallway cam 3. A figure enters through the stairwell door. Not a nurse, not a tech, no badge, no scrub top, just a dark hoodie, jeans, and gloves. They walk straight to 4B's room and step inside. Then the camera glitches, jumps forward 6 minutes. When it cuts back in, the door is ajar. The figure is gone. The tech said the recording probably just buffered. I said, "Since when do these cameras buffer?" He didn't have an answer. The next night, I stayed late. Didn't say why. Just offered to cover another nurse's shift. Said I was catching up on charting. I made coffee around 1 a.m., sat near 4B's room, pretending to read discharge summaries. At 2:46, I turned off the lights and stood beside the door. At 2:52, the hallway lights dimmed. Just a flicker, like someone had flipped the wrong breaker. Then I heard footsteps, light, deliberate, approaching from the stairwell. I stepped back behind the linen cart, heart hammering against my ribs. The figure was exactly as I remembered. Dark hoodie, baggy jeans, gloves. They didn't look around, didn't check for cameras or staff, just opened 4B's door like they belonged there. I waited 10 seconds, then followed. The room was dark, quiet, and empty. No hoodie, no intruder. Just 4B, unmoving, hooked to a dozen lines, the heart monitor beeping slow and steady. I turned on the bedside light. His chart, his actual physical paper chart, was sitting open on the counter. The most recent note was time-stamped at 2:57 a.m. Changed code status to DNR. PT remained stable. It was signed, by me, in handwriting that almost looked like mine, but not quite. I froze. My body wouldn't move. It felt like my lungs shrank in my chest, because I hadn't written that note. I hadn't changed anything, but there it was, clear as ink. Do not resuscitate. I tried to erase it, rip it out, but something in me said no, not yet. I needed proof. I needed someone else to see it. So I folded the sheet, tucked it into my waistband, and closed the chart like nothing had happened. And that's when I saw it again. A streak of black across the tile floor, leading to the bathroom. It wasn't blood. It was soot, and the air reeked of gasoline. I didn't sleep the next day. Kept that folded chart note pressed between the pages of an old textbook in my kitchen cabinet. I told myself I'd give it to someone. My supervisor, risk management, hell, even the press if I had to. Just needed a second set of eyes to say, yeah, no, this is not your handwriting. But I never got the chance, because that morning, 4B coded. The call went out around 6:13 a.m., right as night shift was winding down, and we were passing off reports. Someone screamed from inside his room, a CNA, I think. Said she walked in to check his IV rate and he was unresponsive. Flatlined. No meds had changed. His vitals were fine at 5 a.m. No sign of infection, no sudden dip in oxygen, nothing. It just happened, like someone had flipped a switch. I ran in with the crash cart, but no one else moved. The CNA stepped back, The tech hovered in the doorway. Even the charge nurse looked frozen, like she wasn't sure if she should intervene. Because the chart said DNR. Because the chart said not to touch him. Because the chart said what they wanted it to say. I started compressions anyway. And that's when hands grabbed my shoulders, 2 of them, pulling me back. "Claire," someone said. "Stop. He's DNR. You'll lose your license." And all I could say was, "He wasn't yesterday." They pronounced him at 6:19 a.m. And I stood in the hallway shaking. Not from adrenaline, not from grief, but from rage. Because I knew what had happened. Someone killed him, and I was the only one who gave a damn. I went to my locker, pulled out the folded chart note, and took it straight to my supervisor. Showed her the timestamp, showed her the handwriting, showed her my own initials, forged. She looked at it for maybe 5 seconds before she sighed. "Claire, I'm gonna need you to take a leave." "What?" "You're clearly under stress. You've been seeing things, making a lot of noise lately. Just take a break. Let things cool off." She didn't even look up. Just turned the paper over and slid it into her drawer. I drove home in a daze, parked in the driveway, and sat in my car for what felt like hours. I thought about going to the police. But what would I say? That someone in a hoodie slipped past all our security protocols and rewrote a patient's chart? That a man burned alive smelled like gasoline days after the fire? That the cameras glitched every time he had a visitor? I knew what it sounded like. So instead, I opened a bottle of wine and sat in the shower until the water ran cold. The funeral was closed casket. I didn't go. Couldn't. But I read the obituary online. It said he was a hero, that he died from complications, that he was surrounded by loved ones. All lies. The real ending? He died alone, in a hospital bed, with his lungs full of gas and his code status forged. And the only thing left behind was the smell. Because even now, weeks later, I can't get rid of it. It's in my clothes, in my hair, in the corners of my apartment. That same faint smell of fuel. Not strong, just always there. Like it followed me home. And now I think about the hoodie. Not who it was, but what. Because every time I close my eyes, I see them again. Standing at the foot of 4B's bed. Not moving, not speaking, just watching. And 4B didn't scream that night. Because he knew who they were. Or maybe he'd been waiting for them. Maybe that's why the bandages stayed wet. Maybe it wasn't sweat, or infection, or seepage. Maybe it was gasoline. And maybe he wasn't the only one. Because last week, a new patient came in. Car accident. 3rd-degree burns. The attending handed me the chart with a smile and said, "Room 4B is open again." I don't talk about Ward 6. None of us do. Not anymore. Every hospital has its stories. Urban legends passed between nurses during slow shifts. Horror tales patients whisper to each other late at night. That sort of thing. But Ward 6 wasn't a story. It was real. I lived it. And it changed everything. I've been a night shift nurse for 17 years. I've worked at 4 hospitals, across 3 states. You name it. Violent psych patients, drug-seeking manipulators, trauma cases that'll haunt you for life. I've seen it all. You get used to chaos. You learn to stop flinching at things other people would lose their minds over. But Ward 6, that wasn't chaos. That was something else. Deliberate, cold, watching. It started with Mr. Avery. He was 62. Heart issues, sure, but nothing critical. The plan was to discharge by noon. We'd even done the checklist. No fever, labs clear, vitals stable. That man was smiling, cracking dumb jokes about how hospital pudding should be illegal. I was finishing charting when the monitor flatlined. 3:15 a.m. I still remember the tone of it. It wasn't a frantic crash call. It was too clean, too precise. I rushed in. The code team arrived seconds behind me. The room looked normal until we looked at him. His eyes were open, staring straight at the ceiling. Mouth parted just slightly like he'd frozen mid-scream. We started compressions, epi, the works. But it didn't matter. He was gone. Except, his skin was still warm. Too warm. And I don't mean recently deceased warm. I mean fevered. Like something was still inside him. Clinging. Holding on. We couldn't explain it. The doctor signed off on a probable cardiac event, and that was it. File it, forget it, move on. But Ward 6 changed after that. The weird stuff didn't happen all at once. It started subtle. Call lights flickering in empty rooms. The scent of antiseptic was replaced by something sour and metallic, like old blood. Monitors would beep for rooms with no patients. Sometimes the computers logged vitals, heart rate, pulse ox, for unoccupied beds. I told myself it was power surges, bad wiring. Hospitals are always held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. But then, the patients started saying things. One woman, post-op, loopy but lucid, asked, "Who's the man by the window?" I looked. Blinds down. Door locked. Another patient refused to sleep. Said the man was standing next to her bed all night, crying. She described him. Thin, balding, hollow eyes. Mr. Avery. Security got involved when the cameras started acting up. The footage would glitch, just over Ward 6. One night, a guard pulled me aside. "I saw someone sit up in room 612, he said. I blinked. "That room's empty." "Yeah, I know." He didn't come back the next night, didn't even grab his last check. And then the intercom started whispering. The first time, I was halfway through my shift, 2:37 a.m. I remember because I'd just finished med passes and was sitting with Teresa at the station. She had her headphones in, scrolling Instagram or whatever. I was about to grab a coffee when it crackled. Claire. Software. Like a breath brushing against my ear. I froze. Looked at Teresa. She didn't react. Then again, clearer, sharper. "Claire, you let me die." I stood up so fast I knocked over the chair, ran to the intercom panel, slammed the switch. It didn't stop. That whisper, it wasn't coming from the speaker. It was coming from the hall, from Ward 6. And that's when I realized the doors were still locked. The hallway was dark, but not empty. At the end, just beyond where the light faded, I saw it. A shape. Thin, balding, hollow eyes. It didn't move. It didn't need to. I turned and walked away as fast as I could without breaking into a run. We filed every complaint we could. The techs rewired the intercom. Maintenance checked the HVAC. Security upped patrols. Nothing changed. Then someone reviewed the camera feeds again. This time, they called in the administrator. Because at exactly 3:15 a.m., every night for 3 nights in a row, room 612's bed would appear. Occupied, sheets shifting, a shape sitting up, looking directly at the camera, and smiling. A week later, Ward 6 was shut down. Budget cuts, they said. They turned the hallway into a storage space. No one goes near it. Not at night. I take the long way around when I do rounds. Most of us do. Because every now and then, when the hospital's quiet, you can still hear it. That soft intercom hiss. A whisper brushing past your shoulder. Claire. And that feeling, like someone standing just behind you, just out of reach, just waiting. I asked for a transfer the next week. Didn't care where. Pediatrics, geriatrics, even ER. Just not the 6th floor. I told my supervisor it was burnout, night shift exhaustion, stress, the usual excuses. She didn't ask questions, but she knew. We all knew. Teresa never said anything out loud, but she started keeping a rosary in her locker. One of the ICU nurses moved to days. Another started commuting an extra 40 minutes just to work at the sister hospital. Every single one of us who worked near Ward 6 found some excuse to get away from it. But we still talked. Quietly. Off the record. Like trading trauma over stale vending machine coffee. And every story had the same thread. Mr. Avery. Or something that looked like him. One nurse swore she saw him in the stairwell. Just a glimpse. But enough. Another had a dream where he walked into her room, sat at the foot of her bed and whispered, "It hurts to be forgotten." We weren't forgetting. We were surviving. Then someone made a mistake. They reopened the hallway. Said they needed the storage space for new crash carts and unused beds. No one said the words Ward 6, but we knew what it meant. They didn't reopen the rooms, just the hallway. But that was enough. That was too much. It was a float nurse who found the intercom system online again. They disconnected it and physically removed the line after what happened. But that night, 2:37 a.m., it came on like it had never been touched. Claire, not once, 3 times, louder than ever. That nurse didn't come back the next night, filed for reassignment within 24 hours, didn't even ask for a reference. I wish I could say I kept my distance, but something kept pulling me back. Some part of me needed to understand. I told myself it was guilt, that maybe I missed something with Avery. Maybe if I could just look at the records again, retrace every step, I'd find a crack I overlooked, a reason, a pattern. But it wasn't guilt. It was something else, something more dangerous. One night, I stayed after my shift, just an hour. I told Teresa I left my stethoscope. I took the elevator to 6, empty, silent. The lights were out down the Ward 6 corridor, but the motion sensors still worked. As I walked forward, each light buzzed to life above me, one at a time. Click, buzz, flicker, silence. Click, buzz, flicker, silence. Like it was counting my steps, like it knew I was coming. I stopped outside room 612. The plaque was gone, the door locked, but the scent, that same sour metallic rot from before. And then the sound, not the intercom, not the whisper, breathing. From inside the room, wet, strained, like someone choking through shallow gulps of air. I backed up, turned to go, and saw it in the reflection of the glass door across the hall. Not my face, his. I don't remember getting to my car. I don't remember the drive home. All I remember is waking up in my bathtub at 6:14 a.m., fully clothed, water cold, shoes still on. My phone said I'd made a call at 3:15 a.m., no outgoing audio, just static, but the voicemail recorded it. And somewhere, buried in the background of that static, is a voice, clear, sharp. Claire, you let me die. I quit 2 weeks later. Didn't give notice. Didn't give a reason. I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't walk those halls. Couldn't hear those machines. Couldn't see that shadow at the end of the hallway. Always there, just out of reach. But even now, even from far away, I still see him. Every hospital I pass. Every night, I hear my name whispered in the dead static between radio stations. Every time I close my eyes and see the glow of a call light blinking for a room that doesn't exist anymore. They say Ward 6 was closed for budget reasons. They say Mr. Avery died of heart failure. They say the intercom glitches are a wiring issue. But they don't know what I know. That death isn't always final. That some patients don't leave quietly. And that sometimes, when you try to forget, they come looking for you. Because I let him die. I don't respond to alarms in empty rooms anymore. Not without backup. Not without someone else hearing it too. That's the rule I made after room 312. The rule that saved my sanity. What little of it I've still got left. I've been a nurse for over a decade. I know this hospital. I know its creaks, its buzzes, its elevator stalls, and which crash carts always have dead batteries. I've worked nights so long, I don't even notice how strange this place feels at 2:30 in the morning anymore. Until that night. The night 312 went off. It started like any other slow graveyard shift. Minimal patient load, half the staff half awake. I was doing rounds on 4 South when the heart monitor alert went off. Just one long, shrill flatline. I remember it clear as day because the sound wasn't muffled or distant like it should have been coming from another floor. It was close, too close. I looked at the monitor screen at the station. Room 312, 3rd floor, vitals lost. Now that threw me off, because as far as I knew, the 3rd floor was closed off. Budget cuts, asbestos, something like that. I hadn't been down there in months, No patients, no charts, no assigned nurses. I double-checked the board. Nothing. But the alert stayed solid, blaring, flashing red. I radioed upstairs. Got no response. Thought maybe it was an old monitor glitching. Figured I'd go down and check it out, clear the alert, head back up. No big deal. I took the back stairwell, like I always do. No elevator. I don't trust them after hours. When I got to the 3rd floor, the second I opened the door, I felt wrong. I don't know how else to describe it, like walking into a room where someone just had a fight. The air was heavy, still, like it was waiting. Most of the hallway lights were off. Only every 3rd one flickered to life as I walked by, motion sensor style. Except I've been here long enough to know, this floor doesn't have motion sensors. It was supposed to be locked down for renovation. I didn't hear the alarm anymore. I told myself it was a false read, a wiring loop, maybe something got activated during a routine check. But then I saw it. Room 312. Door wide open. The monitor inside still flashing red. I stepped in. Bed was made. Old but intact. Vitals monitor glowing faintly, as if still holding onto some juice. No patient, no chart. Just the hum of electricity and that smell. Not hospital smell. More like something had rotted there, and someone tried to cover it up with cleaning spray and air freshener but gave up halfway through. I checked the bathroom, and that's when I saw her. She wasn't in the room. She was in the mirror. Behind me. A woman. Pale. Hollow eyes. Cheeks sunken like the flesh was pulling away from her teeth. Hair wet. Soaking. Her gown was hospital issued. Ripped. Stained. And clinging to her like she'd crawled out of a drain. She was mouthing something. Slow and rhythmic. Over and over. But no sound came out. Just the movement of her lips, like she was rehearsing something meant for me. I froze. Couldn't even breathe. Then the bed slammed forward. Not fell. Shoved. Hard enough that the wheels squealed, and I felt the rush of air against my back. The overhead lights burst to life with a wail. Not a beep or a buzz. A wail. High-pitched, mechanical, but layered with something else. Something that sounded human. I ran. I don't remember choosing to run. Just the sensation of movement. My feet hitting the ground so hard I almost slipped in the hallway. I didn't look back. Couldn't. Because I knew if I did, I'd see her. And if I saw her again, she wouldn't be in the mirror. She'd be following me. When I reached the main floor, I made a beeline for security. There was one guy on duty, Marcus. I trust him. Level-headed, former army. Not the kind of guy to screw with someone. I told him what happened. He didn't laugh. Didn't roll his eyes. He just stared at me, all the color draining from his face, and said, "3rd floor's been shut down for 8 months. There's no power to those rooms. No equipment. No monitors." He pulled up the footage to prove it. And that's when I felt real fear. Not goosebumps. Not dread. Fear. Because on the camera feed, the hallway on the 3rd floor was dark. Still. No flashing monitor. No nurse walking into the room. No me. Just the hallway. Empty. Until the very last few seconds of the clip, when the motion sensor from the stairwell picked something up. Not me. Not a patient. But the woman. Standing at the end of the hall. Watching. And then, just before the clip cut off, she waved. After that night, I refused to take stairwell shifts. Call it paranoia, call it trauma, call it whatever you want. But once you see yourself not exist on camera, you start questioning what parts of your life are even real. You start wondering how long something's been watching without being seen. And you start paying attention to things you used to ignore. Like the smell of antiseptic where there shouldn't be any. Like elevator doors that open before you press the button. Like call lights that flicker in closed wings. I didn't go back to 3rd. No one did. But I never really left that hallway either. Because once I saw her, the woman in the mirror, it was like I'd been marked. It started small. I'd find supplies in my cart that I never stocked. Saline bags with faded labels. Syringes sealed in packaging we haven't used in years. One night, I went to grab gauze and found a folded hospital gown in the bottom drawer. Not a fresh one. Not white. It was yellowed. Wet. Still dripping. I told myself maybe someone played a prank. Maybe someone heard me freak out and thought it'd be funny to screw with me. But even the most messed up staff wouldn't go that far. And besides, I kept the cart locked. Then the reports started. Other nurses began mentioning cold spots in 4 South. Patients complaining of someone watching from inside the bathroom. Call lights flickering in room 302, 308, and finally, 312, which is impossible. Room 312 hasn't been connected to the grid since the asbestos remediation shut the floor down. The equipment was stripped. The door was padlocked. I checked it myself after the incident, but I saw the red light on the monitor again, just for a second, blinking in the corner of my eye when I passed the hallway entrance. I told Marcus, the guard, asked if he could pull new footage. He hesitated, then told me he'd already been watching it, because he'd seen her too. He didn't say much. Just that every few nights, around 2:30 a.m., the feed from the south stairwell would flicker. Just static. For less than a second. But always around the same time, the motion sensors would trip on 3rd floor, even though that system isn't supposed to be functional. Then, the last time he checked the footage, it showed me. Only it wasn't. Same uniform. Same badge. Same bun in my hair. But this version of me didn't walk like me. Didn't move like me. She glided, turned toward the camera, stared directly into it and grinned. Marcus wouldn't show me the clip. Said he deleted it. I didn't argue. 2 nights later, I got called into room 409. Patient complaining of strange noises coming from the vent. Said she heard whispering. Thought it was someone hiding in the crawl space. I checked it out. Nothing there. But when I turned to leave, I saw the bathroom mirror was fogged. The patient hadn't showered. On the glass, someone had written a word with their finger, backwards, so it would appear correct when you looked into it. Help! I started asking around. Quietly. Carefully. Found out that years ago, before I ever worked here, room 312 wasn't empty. It belonged to a woman named Sarah Levin. She was admitted for complications following a near-drowning incident. Survived the accident, but suffered hypoxic brain injury. Became unresponsive, but never officially declared brain dead. She lingered in that room for 11 months. Then, one night, her monitor flatlined. Same time, 2:30 a.m. But when the code team got there, they found the monitor unplugged. Not yanked. Unplugged cleanly from the wall. Sarah was still breathing, but they let her die anyway. That's not me speculating. That's what the incident report said, in black and white. A nurse, name redacted, refused to assist with resuscitation. Said it was better this way. No one was ever charged. But after that, the room started showing up in other incident reports. Staff refusing to enter. Equipment mysteriously failing. Patients near 312 reporting night terrors, sleep paralysis, and, most consistently, visions of a drowned woman watching them from reflective surfaces. So they shut it down. Quietly. Claimed it was being renovated. Gutted the wiring. Bricked the service closet where the original oxygen line ruptured, and sealed it with a new door. Except I saw her again. Last night. End of the hallway. Not in a mirror this time. Just standing. Dripping. Waving. Like she's still waiting for someone to resuscitate her. They say ghosts are echoes. That they're trapped in loops. Moments. Trauma on repeat. But this one. She's learning. She followed the monitors. The lights. The cameras. She's not just showing up in room 312 anymore. She's looking for the nurse who opened the door. And I think she's almost found me. I shouldn't have opened that door. God, I know how cliché that sounds. But I don't mean it in the poetic sense. I mean, I literally should not have opened that specific door in the back hallway on the 2nd floor of a hospital that's been operational since the 60s, and has been remodeled so many times they've paved over entire wings like scars. It wasn't even supposed to be there. Let me explain. I work night shift. Always have. I prefer the quiet, the slower pace, the fewer people breathing down your neck. But you also get saddled with more grunt work. stocking linens, deep cleans, equipment checks. All the little things that day shift doesn't have time for. That's how I found the door. Or rather, how the door found me. I'd been doing a routine linen restock when I noticed the counts were off. Like, drastically off. So I followed the list backward, checking closets we hadn't touched in months. That led me to a side corridor I never use. Barely lit, drywall patched in uneven squares, smells like paint and mildew. At the end of the hallway, where there should have been nothing, there was a door. No sign, no label, just gray, metal, old. I swear I've walked that hallway before. I swear that door has never been there. I radioed maintenance to check if they'd opened up a new storage closet or equipment bay. They said no. I stood there with my cart, alone, already regretting being curious. But something felt wrong. Like the air shifted, got heavier. And I swear, for just a second, the door breathed. I opened it anyway. It was cold. Not just hospital cold. I mean sub-basement morgue cold. And dark. My flashlight barely cut through the dust, and what it revealed made me stop breathing. Because this room, this tiny room, was wrong. Every inch of it was coated in symbols, circles, runes, glyphs. Some familiar from horror movies, some jagged and erratic, like someone had carved them out in a frenzy. There were candles, too. Dozens. Most melted into the floor. Some were red, others black. All of them burned low, like they'd been used recently. And then I saw it. On the table in the center. A journal. Old. Yellowed. Bound in leather so cracked it looked like bark. I should have walked away. But I opened it. The first page was a sketch of a man's face, screaming. The next was filled with cramped writing. I only read one sentence. Binding is not banishment. It is containment. It keeps them fed. It keeps them near. That's when I realized the ink wasn't ink. It was blood. I dropped the journal, turned to leave, but the door, the one I'd left wide open, was closed. Not just shut. Sealed. No light leaked through. No sound from the hallway. The walls pulsed. Just faintly. Like they were alive. Like the room itself was holding its breath. I yanked the door open, heart pounding so loud I thought I'd pass out. No alarms went off. No staff in the hall. Nothing. It let me go. But it didn't let me leave. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, things have shifted. Reality feels thin. The lights flicker whenever I'm alone. Doors creak open into empty darkness. Not slowly, not ominously. Just open, as if inviting me. I started having dreams, or maybe they're memories. I don't know anymore. Everyone starts the same way. I'm standing in that room again. The journal's open. The symbols glow. Red, then white, then black. And something is breathing down my neck. Not loudly, not rasping. Just there. Close enough that I feel my hair lift. Sometimes in the dream, I turn around. Sometimes I don't. But every time I wake up, the smell of melted wax and copper lingers in my nose. Like the room followed me out. I try to tell one of the other nurses. She's worked here for 20 years. She got real quiet. Then she asked me, dead serious, "Which door?" I described the hallway, the location, the symbols. She looked at me and whispered, "You found it again?" Again. I'm writing this down because I don't know how much longer I can pretend this is just stress. Every time I pass that hallway, I feel watched. And now, it's not just dreams. I've seen figures reflected behind me that aren't there when I turn around. A handprint appeared on my locker mirror. Small, like a child's. I live alone. The journal. I tried to report it, file an incident. But when I went back to the room with security, there was no door. Just blank wall. And now I can't sleep. Not because I'm scared, but because I'm afraid of going back. Because I think whatever was trapped in that room isn't trapped anymore. I stopped clocking in on time. Not because I was late, because I was afraid. afraid to be alone in any hallway for too long, afraid to open a supply closet, afraid to hear my name whispered over the intercom again, afraid to blink too long in a dark stairwell and see something already waiting when I opened my eyes. I knew how it sounded. Sleep-deprived nurse working nights, classic burnout. But this wasn't fatigue. This wasn't anxiety. This was something else. Something real. The hallway where I found the room. It's gone. Sealed. Covered. No one remembers it ever existing. I asked the nurse, who whispered, "You found it again," what she meant. She denied ever saying it. Told me I was confusing her with someone else. But her hands were trembling when she said it. One night, I was in the med room, restocking. No one else around. The cabinet door opened behind me. Not swung open. Pried. Like fingers had wrapped around the edge and pulled. Slow. Deliberate. I turned around. Nothing there. But taped to the inside of the cabinet was a note. Old paper. Yellowed at the edges. Written in smudged pencil. The circle broke. It can move now. It wants to be known. I kept it. Stupid, I know. But I couldn't throw it away. Couldn't explain why. It felt important. Like a warning. Or a threat. That night, I went home, and the journal was waiting on my kitchen table. The same one I dropped in that room. The same one that was supposed to be gone. Its cover was damp. Its pages were fresh. The ink hadn't dried yet. I started reading it. Page after page of rituals, written in a mix of English, Latin, and symbols I couldn't even begin to decipher. But the message was always the same. To trap a spirit is to starve it. It will claw through time for breath. It will scream through generations. There were names scribbled in the margins. Some had dates next to them. Some were crossed out. One name was mine, Claire. Scrawled in the same pen I use for patient charts. No one knew about the journal. No one could have written that name. Unless I had. Unless something made me. The nightmares got worse. I wasn't just in the ritual room anymore. I was performing the rituals. Pouring salt, lighting candles, drawing symbols with my own blood. Each time I woke up to find something new in my apartment. A wax circle burned into the hardwood floor. Red dust scattered across my sheets. The smell of antiseptic, real antiseptic, hospital grade, hanging in the air. And sometimes I'd find footprints, bare, wet, leading from my closet to my bed. I stopped sleeping. I tried to burn the journal, lit it in my sink, watched the pages blacken, curl, vanish in a hiss of smoke. Next morning, it was back on the table. Only now, a new page was dog-eared. The heading? What to do when the binding fails. I didn't open it. One night, a patient started coding on 4 North. Young guy. Routine post-op, no complications. I was the first to respond. When I entered the room, the lights flickered once, just once. His eyes were wide open, not with fear, recognition. Like he saw something behind me, like it was familiar. As we worked on him, he grabbed my wrist, gripped it so hard it left bruises. Then he whispered, "You opened it." He flatlined 15 seconds later. I didn't say a word to the team. I started digging into the hospital's history, went back through archived blueprints, old maintenance logs, renovation permits from the 70s. There was never supposed to be a door there. But there was a note, faded pencil, barely legible, on the original floor plan. Keep sealed. Circle complete. That was it. No record of who wrote it. No initials. I tried to take time off. The day before I left, I got a text from a number with no contact name. Just a number. "You can go, Claire, but we're already with you." No punctuation, no emoji, no trace. I smashed the phone, switched carriers. Didn't matter. That night I found handprints on my bathroom mirror, upside down, as if someone had been hanging from the ceiling. It followed me. I don't know how to explain it, but I know it's true. I went to my sister's place 2 states away. Stayed with her for 4 days. Didn't tell her anything. The second night, her toddler woke up screaming. Kept saying the burned man was watching from the hallway. I didn't tell her that in the journal. On the very last page, There's a sketch of a figure made entirely of ash, with no face, just blackened bone and fire. I think the rituals weren't meant to trap a spirit. I think they were feeding it, giving it something to cling to. And when the symbols faded, when the wax melted, when the door opened again, it got out. If you work in a hospital and you find an unmarked door, don't open it. If you see runes scratched into the wall and think, that's weird, probably just an old prank, don't look closer. If you find a journal with no author and every page smells like rot, burn it and pray it stays gone. Because I didn't. And now I don't just see it in my dreams. I see it in reflections. I see it on the monitors, brief flashes between heartbeats. And last night, the intercom whispered again, but it didn't say my name this time. It said, "We're almost done with you."